Hi, I'm Stephen Garvey, founder, leader of National Citizens Alliance NCA. We're going to be looking at a comparative economic analysis between Russia and Canada. The information we're going to share tonight will be quite mind-blowing, to say the least. It's really going to shed light on what's happening to Canada when you do this economic comparison. The most important aspect of it will be presented at the end. I'm going to try and keep this as short as possible. I just want to touch on a couple other issues before I get right into the data. As most Canadians know, this country is deeply divided. The basic division is left-right. Then we got liberal conservative, and now we have east west, and then we have one province pitting against another, and so on and so on. This division is divide and conquer, and it only benefits the entrenched establishment by dividing everyone. NCA wants to unite all Canadians from coast to coast. It doesn't matter what province you're in. We want to unite you. We will have the strongest, most prosperous, secure country through the unity. Right now, this division is only helping those in power. Mistake not. The second issue, as a lot of our supporters know, a lot of NCA ideas, policies, talking points have been stolen by other parties, and now these separatists in Alberta are using some of our talking points to justify their agenda. This is blatant plagiarism, and, they should just join NCA. Don't steal our stuff, just join us. If we have the right ideas, right policies, don't just rip them off, just join us. That's all you have to do, otherwise you're just a thief. The second thing, this is all about Canada, all Canadians who are suffering in all the different provinces and territories. Mistake not. It's not one province. It's all the provinces and territories. There's many Canadians struggling. The high taxes, the foreign outflow, the globalist agenda is applying to all Canadians. Let's remember that. We need to tackle this big issue on united, not through division. That only plays into the entrenched establishment. Remember that. But this data, this economic data is mind-blowing, and it totally supports NCA, our vision, our platform, our ideas. And it's something we've been talking about now for over 2 years. Some Canadians are waking up. Many others are still caught up in left, right, liberal, conservative, just programmed, completely programmed into those basic dichotomies, and they're controlled. So let's break out of it, because you're hurting the country. Those old, archaic dichotomies are holding this country back. Break out of them. Get into nationalism versus globalism. That's all that matters. Break your programming. Stop watching the mainstream media. Stop voting, supporting these mainstream parties. That would be a good start. I'm going to get right into the data now. So the first one we're looking at, this is national government debt ratio to GDP, gross domestic product. And this is as of 2019. Russian Federation is at 13.5%. Beautiful number. Beautiful number. Praise the Russian Federation. That means their debt is at 13.5% compared to their GDP. Obviously, zero would be better, but Russia is ranked is fourth in the world for that. They're not controlled by the central banks. In contrast, Canada, national debt ratio to GDP is now at 89.7%. We figure in the next 4 years it's going to be over 100%. The trouble with these numbers is the debt service payments for all the debt. Canada is a debtor nation. It's controlled by the central banking cartel. The debt just keeps growing. Federally, it's growing. It's around 700 billion. It's growing in all the provinces, municipalities as well. That's why that percentage keeps going up. Like I said, we're headed for over 100% very soon, probably in the next year or two. This shows the country's on the right track versus Russia. Beautiful, beautiful 13.5%. Praise to them. It means they're not controlled by the international banking cartel. They have control over their country, at least in terms of banking and finances. And this chart here shows a spectrum on it. Japan, a lot of people don't realize this, has been in major economic downturn. It has the worst national debt to GDP ratio at 237.454%, followed by Venezuela. Canada is down here at 27th, 88, but now it's 89 and growing. We're going to be over 100% soon. They're expecting another 93 billion added to the federal debt alone. The US, which has massive debt, is at 106%. And we look at Greece, which is a failed state, is at 174%. So this is how the central banks are controlling all these countries. Look, Italy's in here. Bahrain, Cyprus, Singapore, Barbados, Portugal are all debt enslaved. You can add Canada in there and it's growing up there. The second issue is trade balance. So we're looking at whether there's a trade surplus versus trade deficit. Russia, as of 2019, September 2019, has over a 14 billion trade surplus. Canada, as September 2019, has $1 billion deficit in terms of trade. And that means in terms of exports versus imports. Again, another indicator that Russia's heading in the right direction. Canada is not. And we can dig deeper into this. This is the trade balance over the last 25 years for Canada. And you can see here it started under Harper, getting into the negatives, and has continued under Justin Trudeau over the last 20 years, right there. If we compare this to Russia, around the same time, their surpluses have been growing and growing as high as 20 billion a year. You see that right there. I'm going to shift now. We're going to look at gold reserves. Gold reserves are important because it's a solid commodity that is backing the currency of that country. Unfortunately, in Canada, the Canadian currency is backed by fiat currencies. It has no gold or silver backing. So if those other currencies like the US crash, so will Canada's. Russia, in contrast, has a lot of gold reserves. So if their currency, if there's a global collapse, it can fall back on to its gold reserves. So Russia has, right now, is second in the world in terms of gold reserves, over 2,200 tons. Canada has 0 gold reserves. And then Justin Trudeau sold off the last remaining amount of gold reserves. But it wasn't Justin Trudeau alone. They've been sold off by liberal conservative governments over the past few decades. And the liberals under Trudeau sold them all off. So what we have backing our currency is other fiat currencies, primarily the US currency. I'm going to dig deeper into this. This is the quarterly official gold reserves, and it shows them right here. The US has the largest gold reserve in the world at 8,100 tons, followed by Russian Federation at 2,200 and China at over 1,900 tons. And then it falls off to India at over 600 tons. Canada is at 0, and you can track it here. Canada had a little bit left. It was 0.0017 in 06, and then they were sold off. In 2014, there was 2.9 tons. Not much. Russia has been steadily buying up gold. As you can see, it's changing. And they surpassed China, is number 2 in the world. As I mentioned, the problem with this, if there's a global collapse, the Canadian currency is backed by other fiat currencies. If there's those currencies collapse, our currency will collapse. Our wealth will be highly vulnerable. NCA supports buying up gold, silver to support the Canadian currency. The reason we've sold the gold off, I believe, NCA believes, is that the establishment in Canada is in bed with the liberal international order, which includes the World Bank, IMF, UN, and the international banking cartel. They're not interested in Canadian sovereignty and protecting it. This is all about globalists. We've been sold out. That's the bottom line. This isn't about Canadian sovereignty. Now, the most important one here tonight, this is mind-blowing. And this totally supports the approach of NCA. We're going to look at migration intake. Russian Federation. This is an estimate, and it's a very conservative estimate. It probably will be less, but we're estimating that they'll probably intake 185,000 migrants this year, 2019, and that will be a record high for the Russian Federation. In contrast, the federal government, the entrenched establishment, is bringing in over 1,870,000 migrants through all streams in 2019 alone. That's more than 5 times what Russia Federation is bringing into their country. Canada is being flooded with third world migrants. 4 out of 5 migrants coming in are from the third world. It's having an impact on Canada's identity, the economy, the heritage, the cultural norms, the environment, the society. The pie is getting smaller for everyone else. There's cheap foreign labor coming in, displacing Canadian workers. I'm going to dig deeper into this. It's quite mind-blowing. The Russian population in 2019 is projected at 145 million. Just over 145 million. Canada's population is currently at 37 million, 5.59. Just over 37.5 million. So Canada has approximately 25.9% of the Russian population in total. In 2019, as I mentioned, Russian Federation is estimated to bring in around 185 migrants. It'll probably be less. In proportion to Canada, that is 47,915. In proportion to Canada, if Canada had the same migration intake, that would translate into 47,915 migrants into Canada. Guess what? NCA sports 50,000 or less a year after a moratorium on immigration. NCA's policies are totally consistent with the Russian Federation, which is all about putting the Russian people first. It's about Russian nationalism, putting Russia first, as they should. Canada, as I mentioned, is bringing in this year 1,087,000 plus migrants through all streams. And get this, in proportion to Russia, that would translate into Russia bringing in over 4 million migrants in 2019. If Russia would adopt Canada's immigration approach, which is wide open borders, flood the country with third world migrants, Russia would bring in over 4 million migrants this year in proportion to its population. Unbelievable. How more clear do you have to be about what's going on in Canada? These are globalists turning Canada into a globalist village. If we dig deeper here, Russia is bringing in migrants who speak Russian and who are from similar countries in terms of ethnicity. Ukraine, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Moldova, and other post-Soviet states. So the 185,000 they're bringing in are consistent with ethnic Russians. They're not diluting their population with migrants who are foreign to that ethnicity. They're adding to the Russian ethnicity. In contrast, Canada is bringing in migrants from 190 different countries, and Harper did the same. With Philippines, China, India, Iran, Pakistan, Syria as some of the top source countries. So that's quite a difference there. Canada is bringing in migrants which are threatening traditional Canada, whereas Russia is bringing in migrants that add to traditional Russia. Very distinct differences. Russia's replacement rate is around 1.7%. As mentioned, the Russian government is bringing in more migrants compatible with Russian ethnicity, and they will be, according to Putin, encouraging larger traditional families similar to Hungary. And to the NCA, we have a policy on that, encouraging larger traditional Canadian families. Beautiful. Beautiful stuff. In contrast, Canada's replacement rate is around 1.6%, and the federal government and entrenched establishment is pushing for more and more migrants, regardless of their ethnicity and compatibility with traditional Canada. now over 1 million per year, while discouraging larger traditional families through extreme taxation, job displacement, and stagnant wages through mass migration. You can see the two countries are heading in different directions. Canada is in a globalist direction with ill regard for traditional Canada. Russia is supporting traditional Russia. Russia's approach is consistent with the platform and policies of National Citizens Alliance. NCA supports the creation of a national people's bank, shift of the public lending right to the bank from the central banks, pay off the federal debt at low or no interest through the new bank, get our debt down, get our debt ratio, GDP, down to at least 13%. NCA supports a moratorium on immigration, followed by 50,000 or less total immigration per year. Completely consistent with what Russia's doing. Protecting their identity, as they should. Protecting their cultural norms, their heritage, their language, their way of life. NCA supports smart, fair trade in the best interest of the Canadian people rather than globalist trade like TPP, which was passed by Justin in 2018 and supported by those other mainstream parties. And they want globalist trade with India, globalist trade with China. The Conservatives are sporting Kanzuk, wide open borders, a Commonwealth bloc like the EU. This is all contrary to the best interests of the Canadian people. Canada, in terms of the mainstream, the entrenched establishment has been sold out to globalist interests. Without question. Russia has not, as indicated by its policies. It's true nationalists, Russian nationalists, looking out for its interests of itself and its people. It's very clear. As I said, Russia has a nationalist approach with fiscal responsibility and protect and enhance the identity, heritage, cultural norms of the Russian people. Canada has a globalist approach with fiscal irresponsibility and undermine the traditional identity, heritage, cultural norms. Literal replacement of traditional peoples with third world migrants. This is very clear. As I said at the beginning, if you keep voting for and supporting the mainstream parties, that is all you're going to get. Harper brought in over 730,000 migrants in 2015 alone from 190 countries. Mulroney started mass immigration. Canadians need to wake up. They need to decide what kind of country they want. But praise the Russian Federation. They are standing up for their country, their people. It's beautiful. Beautiful fiscal responsibility. They're not enslaved to central banks. They're not controlled by central banks. They're protecting their traditional people of Russia. They're not flooding the country with third world migrants. Beautiful stuff. Beautiful stuff. But this country is in crisis, without question. It's heading in the wrong direction. We need to pull all together as Canadians and wake up. You've been led astray. This has been going on for decades, starting with Pierre Trudeau and every subsequent government. NCA is providing rational, common sense approach that puts our people first, all Canadians first. That is the only way forward. Please share your comments, and thank you for joining tonight.